So there's an ancient wall in Montana that some people have tried to say is a natural rock formation, and almost anybody looks at it and goes, "You're out of your fucking mind." That's 100% placed in stacked stones. But the problem is, this ancient wall. Look at that. I mean, shut the fuck up. How is that?
Oh yeah.
Just shut the fuck up. Can I see the original picture, Jamie? That one. Yeah. I mean, shut the fuck up. Someone stacked that for sure. It's in a straight line. They're stacked on top of each other. They fit together.
Was that wall, the sage wall, crafted, manufactured by people, or is it a natural formation? That's an interesting question, and scientists have some answers to that question. Now, Rogan is just looking at it superficially and saying, well, it looks constructed, therefore it 100%, without doubt, completely is constructed. And then he gives as evidence that these are clearly stones that are stacked on top of each other in a straight line. So, yes, superficially, you look at it, it's like, yeah, you would look at that and say, yeah, somebody stacked those stones on top of each other. However, if you see that picture at a proper scale, like something providing scale, you realize that some of those granite stones are massive. The biggest one would weigh 91 tons. And so then you're like, well, wait a minute, that's kind of big. I'm not aware of any created, manufactured walls with stones that big, let alone ancient ones. And now we're immediately getting into some red flags here. You know, how were they lifting and maneuvering stones that long ago? But anyway, we could put that aside for now and just say, if we have two hypotheses, right? So Rogan would look at it and go, looks man-made, it's 100% man-made, shut the F up, don't even tell me anything else. Scientists would look at that wall and go, okay, let's answer the question. What are all the possible hypotheses here? Let's just consider two basic categories, constructed or natural formation. What would we expect to see for one versus the other? We could test these two hypotheses. So if we say, if this were a natural formation, so first of all, is there a process that could make this? Is there a natural process that can produce this kind of a structure? And the answer is yes. Right? If you have uplifting of magma that then cools, the granite will, when it cools, it will fracture in long straight lines. And then those fractures erode over millennia and millions of years. So it kind of produces what we're seeing there. This looks like stones are fitted together, but that's because it's one stone with cracks, right? And but by definition, if it's one solid piece of rock that was just cracked, it's going to look like they were perfectly fitted together, but they're not. It was one original slab of granite. It's straight, sure. The geological processes can lift it straight up out of the ground, and you can get these straight structures. We see these elsewhere in the world. Nothing unusual there. So yes, natural processes are completely able to produce this kind of structure. We could ask, is this in this area, this part of Montana, the Sage area, are there other similar rocks, other similar structures, other similar geological processes happening? And the answer is yes, they're all over the place. Rocks like these are all over the place with similar kind of cracked, formations, and that looks like rocks piled up, but this one is just the one that looks the most like a wall, right? It's kind of straight for a couple hundred yards or so. If you think these rocks were piled on top of each other deliberately, then don't you have to think that they all were, or I guess maybe they were doing it to make it look like the rocks that were already there. But again, the simpler explanation is if those are natural formations, then this one could be a natural formation too. There's really a good, solid piece of evidence, and this is the one that geologists use to say, yes, this was a natural formation. So granite has a structure to it, right? Not all granite is identically the same. There's mica in there and quartz and other impurities and other minerals, and that the exact mixture of those things and their grain size, etc., forms kind of like a fingerprint for that piece of granite. And if you look at it carefully, you could essentially say, yes, this granite is the exact same granite as this one over here, right? They have the same fingerprint, the same percentage of mica and quartz, the same granular size, etc. And so if this were a natural formation, you would expect that all of these rocks across the entire wall would have a continuous, seamless connection of this microstructure to the, or even macro structure, but just like the structure of the granite itself. It would all be the same, right? As if it were one solid piece of rock. If these rocks were brought here and assembled, you would not expect that. You would expect that different rocks would have slightly different signatures from them, and they might even be completely different, right? And in fact, like if you look at a place like Stonehenge, they can look at the rocks at Stonehenge and say, these rocks came from this quarry miles away. That rock was brought here from there, and we could tell because when we look at it under a microscope, right, we look at it carefully, we could match it. We could match the signature of this rock to that quarry over there. We do this all the time. We did that with the pyramids, for example. If you look at the Washington Monument, at some point there's a color change in the stone used to make the Washington Monument. Why is that? Because construction had to stop for the Civil War. And then by the time they started building it again, they were at a different section of the quarry and the rocks were slightly different and it has a slightly different color and you can see it. It wasn't a continuous quarrying of rocks. There was a discontinuity in there. Anyway, that's what you would be seeing if this were a constructed wall. But if it's natural formation, it should all be completely uniform. Same signature, same fingerprint, and that's what we see. So geologists, looking at it scientifically and knowing what they're talking about, have concluded this is absolutely a natural formation. We could look at it from the other side and say, is there any evidence that this is constructed? Are there any tool marks? No. Is there any evidence of quarrying or transportation? No. Any evidence that these rocks came from somewhere else other than where they are currently? No. Are there any artifacts in the area to indicate that there was occupation by people or by anybody in this area at the time? No. There's no evidence that this wall was constructed. There's no evidence of occupation here. We can't even imagine why they would have built it there, but then we could put that aside because people do things for weird reasons, but whatever. But it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and not just from a modern perspective. Like there's no reason why people would be setting up shop there and would have invested that much effort into just putting a random wall up somewhere, right? So it's not in the middle of. Like this is a place where people were living and hunting and there was water. Like there's no reason to think that people were living there, no artifacts of their existence there. So all of the evidence points to this being a natural formation, as strange as that might seem initially just from a superficial look at it. Plus also keep in mind, you're always seeing the sage wall from the same side, right? From the side that got uplifted and is now exposed as a wall. If you look at it from the other side, it doesn't look so much, it looks a lot more like a natural formation when you look at it from the other side. But we never are shown it from that side, right? It's the more impressive side is what you're going to see the pictures of. So from a scientific perspective, it's a natural formation. There's a lot of lines of evidence that lead us to that conclusion. And it looks like a wall, shut the F up approach doesn't really get you to the right answer.